Hello, Deepak, and welcome to Starting Remote. I'm really thrilled to be hosting you.
Thank you very much, Julia. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you.
I was so glad when you got in touch, and it's very nice how a lot of companies right now, companies that maybe have specialized in working in different fields, are using that knowledge and trying to transfer it to remote work. And you particularly have worked with a lot of contact centers in your life, so you are the expert in contact centers. And I was looking forward to talking to someone who really understands this kind of transactional work and can give a bit of insight into how this works remotely.
We've been so way back in 2005. Uh, I was looking after about 30 odd contact centers spread across different regions, and the challenge for me was that we spoke about 30 different languages, and we had about 25 or 30 different festivals every month. So that was a lot of eating and drinking around these. But importantly, uh, the challenge for us was that we did the same thing in 350 different ways, which was not good for our customers and ourselves, and it caused a lot of traction. So I needed to put in a structured approach, and I drew upon my own training to put in a structured approach to assessing the entirety of customer service delivery. And being in a multinational environment as well, we had different uh, people, different teams doing different assessments across our team and across customers, but nothing holistically. And ironically, nothing's changed over the last 25 years. Um,
They are starting to change things. At least the business centers that I've been working in, they are starting to be a bit more proactive in really understanding not only the customer but understanding the employee as well. Because I think that was one of the things that was missing in contact centers. But yeah, it's really great to be able to talk to this about to talk to you about this. But I'm very curious. Did you always work in contact centers since you started your careers, or no? Because right now I think you have close to 3,000 contact centers that you are working with.
yep.
How
Yes.
did you end up working with contact centers and being on committees like the China Contact Center Standards Committee? How did you get into the business?
Look, I as lots of I tell lots of people I just fell into it, um, and that was again because I was looking after these centers, and I realized that we needed a structured approach. So forward back a few more years, uh, I started. I took basically we took a physical workbook, a checklist, and we thought, look, there's only a few of us, we can't multiply ourselves, so let's get this online. And I saw the internet coming in 2007 and 2009, and so I said, let's do so between 2007 and 2009 we developed this online tool to assess customer service delivery. Now, how I really fell into it was when I walked into a couple of centers, because I went about seeing a few, in fact, one or two outsources at, going back many years. I actually found those conditions, what I thought was similar to the conditions of the 18th or 19th century. Uh, and they were pretty oppressive. Uh, and so I wanted to have a structured approach to assessing what service delivery was about, because there are different elements that go into it. There's a technology, there are the processes, there's alignment to organizations, there are the channels of communication that you need to use, there are the customers who we need to understand and address. And then we also have this thing called mental health and safety as well. There's a physical health and safety, but there's mental health and safety, because it's such a correlation between delivering good customer service, between caring for your employees, and how you train and how you run your quality assurance for to deliver the customer service that your customers want and your organization organizations is designed to deliver.
You care deeply about mental health in contact centers, and I agree with you. If your employees are oppressed and they don't feel safe at work and they don't feel good, they don't feel that they can speak up, how can they deliver good service to their customers? It's impossible. I think they're learning the wrong behaviors and not having the right motivation to support customers. Did you manage to change any of that?
Yes, and to me, a lot of my life's work uh, it gets very rewarding when you have managers actually being aware of what are the key elements that are necessary to support mental health within the center. So simple awareness of, for instance, if you want to change a shift, if you want to move it from 4:30 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you want to have as much consultation as you possibly can, because there are mothers, there are single parents, there are parents who need to go pick up their children. And if at 4:30, if you move it even by half an hour, it causes significant stress, untold stress. In fact, it can even cause a revolt, as it did in one center that we assessed. Um, but that's about saying, hey, listen, it's about engaging with your staff in that. Yeah, it might be good for your customer, but you need to be able to engage, talk through with your team to be able to change simple things like that. And that's creating awareness. So for us, when I see people, customers using Snapshotz and working through the health and safety, the mental health and safety areas, and understanding where they are in relation to what it should be, that's very powerful, because they are aware and they now know the steps that are needed to maintain mental health and safety in the center.
You started Snapshot somewhere in 2009, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes.
With an aim to standardize service delivery in contact centers. But this year, you also started RemotAbility.
Yes.
Did you start it with contact centers in mind, serving the same customers who are moving remote, or how did you start RemotAbility?
Um, uh, so at the end of March, nearing the end of March, I managed to squeeze back into New Zealand on that last commercial flight, I think it was. And after a week or two, um, I found a lot of our customers, actually after a week, uh, I found a lot of our customers asking us whether we had checklists for remote working. Uh, and what they were asking was, do you have all of these? What do you really check? And I'm going, listen, we've been doing this for the last 10 years. We've been assessing remote work for home-based agents for the last 10 years. And we've got all the structures, all the assessment areas that are necessary, starting with their physical, through to the technology needs, through to how to manage and monitor, or what are used in manage and monitoring, in terms of communicating internally, in terms of managing that digital divide, in terms of mental health, in terms of the rigors and structures required, and the communication tools and approaches that are required to manage a remote workforce. Uh, and and of course, it dawned on me that there were now a few other newer regulations put out by the International Labour Organization, WHO, the UN, and government standards like UK, Australia, New Zealand, US, Europe. They all of these had policies put out. And what we did was we just incorporated all of those policies into this new tool that we call RemotAbility.
And I'm very curious to go into it. But let me ask you first, because you've seen this company slowly moving to remote for the past 10 years, right? It's not only this year that you have touched remote work. And I'm curious, how many of the contact centers you were working with, and how many of the companies and your customers already had people working remote?
We've had roughly a third, 20 odd percent at
Hmm.
20 odd percent of our companies had some form of remote work because of a business continuity plan
Okay.
that was needed. Right. And those that survived the C-19 initial crush uh, are those that had business continuity plans in place and could move to a remote work environment. Well, look, certainly because it is an area that I'm passionate about. It's an area where the world currently does need uh, to be able to does need to have the right information and tools to get it right, because we are playing with people's lives, uh, and if we get it right, we got a productive world and a mentally health and fit world.
Yes.
Otherwise, we are at, if we don't have it right, we are challenged, as individuals, as organizations, as governments.
For
So
sure. For sure. And transactional work is a very specific kind of work where you can work from home and you can feel that you're autonomous, but you're actually not, because everything that you do is being tracked
well,
very
yes.
thoroughly.
Yeah, well, look, it is the case, but I think referring back to the question you asked me about, remote work and challenges, uh, what we really also found was that one of the key drivers for remote ability was that we found that instead of assessing people who are by either by a phone or uh, supporting digital conversations with customers, uh, regardless of the type of work that you did, remote work is remote work. And so, what applied to the transactional worker applies to any other worker across the organization working remotely, and whether this be full time or part time.
Oh, it's interesting to see that, because in my mind there was a difference in the way of working, and for me at least but I haven't worked remotely in a transactional job, right? I have worked in a contact center, but
Mhm.
I was still doing recruitment for that specific contact center. So for me, that was not necessarily a transactional job like my colleagues had.
So,
Now, comparing the type of work I do and the type of work I've seen them doing, I feel like I have more autonomy and more control over my time, because I'm not measured strictly on how many calls I get or how much money I collect or
mhm,
how many IT issues I solved in a
mhm,
given amount of time.
mhm,
Right? I'm just left to my devices, do what I have to do, and maybe I need to turn in a project in a month or in 3 months. Right?
mhm,
And how I split my time, no one really cares. I need to provide the results. Whereas for transactional work, it feels like every day they have to deliver something, and it's
mhm,
tracked and monitored. So even if they work from home, the time is not their own to control and to adjust as they see fit. So for
mhm,
me, this feels that in my head, this is way more stressful than the type of work I'm doing, or it can lead to way more stress and mental health issues, as you've just said. But it's good that we have this discussion, because now you can really give me a glimpse. Is this true? Am I thinking about this in the right way, or am I totally wrong?
Uh, look, I think we need to break that down. But the short answer is that it is it is different. Yes, you're right. It is different. Um, if you are tied to certain hours, whether you're a contact center worker or whether you are delivering, uh, for instance, online. If you're a nurse delivering services online because you can't get out, you are tied to those hours, and you really don't have flexibility in those hours that you're committed to. But and also, if you're a knowledge worker or and worker who's got different deadlines, that's you do have the flexibility to work within them, but then you're tied to deadlines. And one of the key pieces that organizations are now realizing is that it is not what you do with your time, but it's actually what you produce in that time that is tasked of you. And that has been a challenge for many organizations, where it has been traditional to see somebody come in at 8 o'clock and leave at 4 o'clock. And if they stay till 6 o'clock, that means they were a hard worker, regardless of the output. And that is a challenge for many managers, many organizations, to be able to define what is the output that is required of a person to achieve whatever goals that the organization is aiming to, serving customers,
It's
supporting.
still surprising to me that this is still an issue. I mean, I know you've been doing the same because you've been creating standards and metrics and so on. But even for me as HR, we've always held the hands of the managers that, hey, you need to set objectives. You need to give people a purpose. What are they working towards? What are you measuring them against? And you do the same when you work remotely, right? It should be the output that matters. But indeed, it's still the interaction, and it's still how much I have seen your face, how much I can see you're working, and how much you're sitting in meetings, and that matters, which is still surprising. It's, yeah, I mean, it should be a pretty easy shift, but it is not. You're seeing the same, I imagine, even with contact centers, which are measured thoroughly by their own customers.
Indeed, in this short while, we have found that contact centers have definitely adapted to the new conditions much better than other members within the organization, because of several elements. One important element is that they're continuously having interactions with either their customers and internally, and that's an important part of mental health. Uh, if you are if you're a copywriter, or you're doing advertising, or you're doing HR recruitment, your engagements are a lot limited. So that element of mental health is pretty important to, as part of our remote work, to actually go on through. But that, I think, probably dovetails into what remotability is about.
Yes, for sure. Are you ready to show everyone what remotability is about?
Yes. So let me, yes, Julia, let me just get on to sharing screens here. So, yes, come March, April, instead of that one office, we now have hundreds, if not thousands, of different offices spread across, spread across a simple little town or right across the world. And the challenge is for us to be able to make sure that these organizations, that these little offices have people, team members in them that can work safely, that can work healthily, that are mentally fit, and that can work productively. But it's not just productively, but those that can work productive and be sustainably productive. So even though you might have a week of productivity, or what we call productivity, you can work 8, 10, 12 hours, put out engage and put out uh, products, whatever you're tasked to do. It has to be sustainable. And this is those that organizations that can actually achieve this are the ones that are going to have a healthy workforce into the future. And so, what we've been able to do is to use the same features and functionalities of Snapshotz, which is our core customer service assessment tool, to be able to deliver the functions and features and benefits of remotability, which I will get to in a minute. But it is important for us to stress here that remotability or remote work now straddles not only the standard health and safety areas, it straddles human resources, it straddles technology, it straddles well-being, it straddles new ways of communicating internally as well as externally. And so it requires a holistic approach to managing. And interestingly, in these few months that we've had remote ability going, organizations are the key question organizations want to answer for themselves is, are we remote capable? Are we doing the right things that make us remote capable? Because we've got now new communication tools that have gone out. We got some new infrastructure that we've set up. We've got to combine the tools that we currently have. Of course, in the contact centers, you have what's called the workforce management tools, and then across you also have knowledge management and quality tools. All of these combined, but you also have your assets out there, people and computers and things, and there are elements of risk there that we haven't quite contended with. We overall need to know across our team at any one given point whether we've got a remote work capable workforce. From an individual perspective, going forward, there are two questions going to be asked of you. One is, what have you learned during COVID that you can now give back to the organization? Or if you're being, a recruiter will ask you that question. The second question you're going to be asked is, can you work well remotely? How well can you work remotely? And
I
to be
think
able to
everyone
do
says
that,
yes, right? I can work remotely. Or are there people who say that they cannot?
look, everybody will see, exactly. So how do you assess how they work, whether they can work? And this is one of our key features of RemotAbility, is to be able to provide remote work capability assessment. And I'll demonstrate in a minute or two. You can demonstrate that, look, these are the elements that go into my remote work capabilities, and this is what I do, and this is what I'm capable of, which then takes away it provides recruiters, it provides organizations with some degree of comfort that, look, person A is remote working. They're not just saying it. No, we know that they're working well remotely, or they can work well remotely, because they're committed to do all of these things. They already have these constructs in place. But I'll take you more through it in a little while. We can go through the detail of it in a minute or two once we cover these areas that what RemotAbility actually covers. I think I've already talked to you about how we've included the ILO, the UN, the different guides, including policies and publications from the different governments. We also have 10 years of data around work. And I don't believe there is anywhere else, and this is how I began to find you as well, because I was looking for others to talk to, and so and we've not really found anybody that's got this data.
It's very rare for someone to have data on remote work for such a long time. Maybe researchers.
Yeah. Sorry, it wasn't design, it was accident, but we've got it.
Yeah.
And so you can see from individuals' perspective, we cover the standard areas of physical health and safety, the types of electrical equipment you use, desk chairs, monitors, headsets, workstation setups, your posture, pretty key, because already, for instance, in some of the organizations and insurance companies that we know, RSI, back strain are all increasing. Plus, of course, with some of our customers who provide mental health and support services, volumes too are increasing. And this is so what we really want to do with remote ability is we wanted to work through all the different areas that are important to ensure that you're working well, that you've got the right constructs in place to work safely and healthily, and then also mental health. But I'll come to that in a second. Now, what is also important with remote work is that in the traditional health and safety spaces, you'll find people saying we are lone workers, meaning you have an electrician going out to from a company going out and working on customer sites. But that's now we also have the condition where you have individuals who, for various reasons, might be working alone at home. Right? And this is a slightly different risk that the organization faces. Because, for instance, we had one of our customers who had a team member who'd been working alone and had passed away. Nobody knew for about 2 days. Yeah? And so
Okay.
we
Wow.
need to understand there are some constructs that we need to look at when working alone, and especially when we're working remotely. So we also have in traditional areas of lighting, heating, cooling, ventilation. Connectivity is key, so everybody goes for that. And then secondly, the most important piece is the world's beginning to contend with this, but there is this issue of data collection, ethics, and privacy. And whilst you have GDPR, there is now it's much more critical because some of us have our own devices and we move between different, from work to being social. So there are several issues that are cropping up, and what an individual needs to understand around this. There is also now with remote work, you might have the same individual now working for many organizations, and that's changed the way they need to account. Their taxation, their insurances have all now need to be considered. So we provide a checklist
So
in that.
it's a very comprehensive tool.
Um, and um, and then yes, and from a personal productivity. So I was talking about disciplines, or probably not in this forum, but to be a remote worker, you need discipline. It is not like before. You now need to know what you need to do from the time you get up to the time you get to bed. It has to be structured. The moment you deviate from that structure causes a whole range of uncertainty and basically loss of productivity and being. So these are pretty important from a mental health perspective. So we focus on what you need to do to stay productive, how you need to connect with people, and also what you need to do for your mental and physical and mental well-being. So that's from an individual's perspective. From an organization's perspective, now this whole COVID has left organizations, large and small, dealing with this significant, we're dealing with sort of significant issues that they've not had to deal with before. Um, so the traditional tools of collaboration and communication has changed, and although they may have had it in place, they've expanded it out. There are also new technologies that now they need to include, like workforce management. And then uh, a lot of the queries and a lot of the discussions we're having with our current customers is them saying, look, we want to use RemotAbility as a standard to be able to align to provide the right remote work policies and procedures for our team. So attendance and availability means, quite different
Yeah.
when you're working remotely. Absenteeism means different. The kind of codes of conduct that you need. For instance, um, bullying and harassment happens even if you're working remotely. So there are some conditions now that organizations need to be thinking about in terms of how we actually put this together. What are the key areas that we need to consider? What are the policies that we need to put in place around bullying and harassment digitally? Um, there is also the issue where uh, they've now got a new recruit who's not coming to office. He may have come in once, and they really don't understand the constructs of the organization. How do you run and train and induct somebody who doesn't really understand or get culture? Yeah? So there are all these elements now that need to come into place. And again, I say to people, look, it is all there. It just needs structure. And once you've got structure, you can then begin to implement. Yeah. But the first important piece is understanding it. Yes, Julia, you
So
better ask me.
organizations and individuals are going through the questionnaire. What comes out of it?
Right. So let me take you in here straight away. Let me see. Let me tell you what. So we've got two sets of licenses. One is for the organization, one is for the individual. So if you've got 10 individuals in your organization, you'll have 10 licenses plus one license for the organization. And as I mentioned to you earlier, here are the different areas that the um, organization license will cover. So remote working, attendance, policies and procedures around confidentiality, again, and data protection, how you use social media, how you, in terms of traveling, working alone, mental health, and importantly, even in organization that we know that's got about 30,000 employees globally, they don't have all documents, all policies and procedures related to remote working in one place. And with small organizations, they don't have the capability or capacity at all. So we've got the ability to include documents and policies and procedures in one place so that it can be used as a reference portal for them. From an
And at the
individual,
end, do they get one report, like a number, which
yes,
says 7.5 out of 10, and these are the areas that you still need to work on?
yes, yes, Julia. So let me come to that for once in 1 second because it will be useful for your viewers to also see how the numbers are generated, how the tool operates. So, for instance, here are the different sections that the workspace area covers. We call it the five-factor area. So we've got workspace, environment, and tech, those areas that we talked about. And these are the areas that the tool covers. Again, we've got the ability to enable a team member to upload images of their workspace, upload images of any documents or documents that they have, so that if the company now or the manager that has the manager, the organization has now got a view of what their workspace setup looks like. In some countries, it's mandatory to provide maps at least detailing where your workspace is in relation to exits and fire hazards and so on and so forth. So this provides organizations with the ability to bring all that information in one place. Otherwise, it's stuck in some either in a manager's email or in HR, or they can't really find it. So it's a huge advantage for organizations to be able to have everything in one place. How the tool works is that, and this is what's important, is that you are now engaging your team member with these questions. It is a checklist. It is also saying, hey, look, if you say you've got all PowerPoints that are in good condition, do you have surge protectors on your power boards, right? If you say no, well, then what you can do is you can give yourself, you have what's called the assessment options. So we use a structured, the traditional financial audit approach to actually work through the tool. So it may form a checklist, but it's also working through and understanding areas where we need to attend to and build a task list as you go along. And this is useful because what we are doing in this process is that we are also having the organization understand globally what their needs are at an individual, team, and organization level. And I'll come to that in a second. So this task begins. You can assign yourself a task. You can assign your head of HR or your health and safety person in this case, or the IT person. You can assign a task, and you begin to then build these tasks. Once you work through the tool, which by the way shouldn't take more than 1 to 1.5 hours. Yes, it is not something that you can tick off in 10 minutes, right? But usually you want to give it some thought because remote work is your life. You want to be able to make sure that you've got all the necessary conditions in place. And once you've done that, within that 1 hour, you will get very quickly, you can begin to understand, first of all, whether you are remote work worthy. Yeah? So you've got to immediately, you understand whether you're remote worthy. And then what you're also able to do is very quickly say, look, we are above this global standard, or we are in terms of remote work capability. So this report, so we get several reports, but this report tells you where you sit globally. It then gives you an overview of those 5 key areas. So your score versus the global benchmark. You can then dive down to the details. So making it easy, the workspace monitors, keyboards, mouses, all of that. You can, again, in each of those subsections, you've got your remote ability score and you've got the global benchmark. Mental health, likewise, again, a table that's color coded to make it easy for you to read for yourself. Your top 5 key performing areas and your areas that you need to focus on. Then you get down to the detail of the questions. So you can see what you've answered, and if you've said no or you've responded in some way, you can say, do I have a smoke detector alarm? 1.10.9. And do we check it annually at least? And some people don't check it. Some people do. So you can actually go down to the detail of the questions that you responded to. Again, the table provides you a color-coded maturity scale that says, look, there are 4 areas that require focus, like in basic, and so on. What you also, to make it much easier again, and I keep reiterating the fact that we want structure, we want speed, we want to be able to understand quickly what our needs are, what we need to do, and when we do that, we can become safe, healthy, and productive. And that really is the important focus for us.
I'm curious. You mentioned the benchmark at around 83% or somewhere there, right? Just at the start. Is this a desired state, the benchmark, or is it where most companies are? That's the average.
So
on average, companies are 86% ready.
Currently, it's the desired state.
Okay. And where do you find the rest of the population being? What are they on an average?
Yeah, so it's been quite interesting. In the organizations that have now completed remote ability, the range from small to medium scale, right, has moved. The small to medium scale organizations sit between a low of 67% to 85% roughly in terms of remote work capabilities, right? So 85 is the top end for
Mhm.
small and medium scale type organizations, whereas 68 to 87% are in the larger organizations. However, statistics, as you know, can be lies. What is really coming through to us is that regardless of the type of organization, you have a range of individual capabilities within that organization. And what it's telling the organizations and what it's telling us is that just because you've got a wellness program that you're delivering across the board, it is not meeting everyone's needs, because you need to be a lot more specific. And so, if I might again go back to sharing my screen, if you don't mind, because there in here is a very important. Uh, Bear with me. So this is the report for the organization. There's a lot of depth in this, but what I would like to talk to you, and you talked about what is it that this 30 odd percent are missing, and you can see that here. So what this report also does is it looks at, for instance, if you've got a team across, and to some of the questions you were asking earlier about benchmarks as well. So imagine if you've got 30 or 60 teams across your organization, you can see how that particular team's faring. You can see what their score is, the average score across those teams are. You know what the global individual score is, and then importantly, you know what the score as an organization, what your organization has scored against a global benchmark, and it's giving it context. So imagine if you had 30 odd teams or 100 teams, you now know how your teams sit. You also now know where your individuals sit. So you know where your top 5% is and where your bottom 5% is. So it gives you an indication, again, overview for organizations to report on. And one of the uh, key feedbacks that we've got from CEOs is that, look, for the first time, I can actually hand on heart say, uh, I believe my people are working, 90% of my people are working well remotely. They got the right remote work capability. And in today's context, that is what the board would now need to hear. And they need to hear it immediately. They don't want long essays. They want to know, what is it, where are we at? What is it, how is the individual faring? Because we do care for the individuals. How are the individuals faring? How are the teams faring? How do we support managers? And to that, so to your question about, okay, what is the challenge for the 30 odd percent, and not necessarily 30 odd percent, it could be right across the organization. So what this element of the report does, it says, here are your top 20 issues. So for instance, we do know that right now, one of the greatest challenges as far as IT is concerned, and in this particular case, it's actually a real organization, people clicking on links, on bringing in images, working with websites that they shouldn't be doing. And it's about making sure that we are educating a certain, we're educating the people that are, and as scammers, as digital theft, digital fraud has increased, we need to have specific communications. We need to be very specific around what is it that we need to look at. So this is what this organization's begun to do, is they've begun to specifically communicate what to avoid, how to detect, and what to be aware of in terms of fraud. We see a lot of these things, but we want it needs to be specific. So the other piece they found is that people are working 8, 10, 12 hours without actually doing anything. So they're running forced programs. Not everybody, but there are people who sit a long time in the day. So you want to be targeted at these people because they can be your CEO who's sitting 8, 10, 12 hours a day. You need them. They need to get out and so it's about being able to target. It's about having the information quickly available to be able to use your resources, because a lot of and one HR person said, look, we spent a lot of time pulling a lot of training, a lot of these programs together. That's a lot of money, and we don't really have budget for remote ability. And then when they did get the budget and do it, they're saying, look, I wish we had done this before, because we now have a structured approach to go and ask for resources for budgets, and we also we can actually map what the impact of our actions have been. So making we can now track it over time. So what the tool also allows you to do is to take a step in terms of how the organization is faring, how each individual is faring, how teams are faring over a period of time. So just because you did a remote ability in August this year, and you put some things in place, things may not have changed, or things might have changed. And so the value of your investments, your focused resources on investing in these particular needs, makes for a healthier, productive workforce.
You have set the benchmark yourself. Are you building one right now so you can afterwards compare companies, smaller companies to medium and to large companies in different industries?
So, Julia, what I should have clarified is that whilst in the benchmarks, there are some definite government and legal directives that is a yes or a no. So, you do need to have, for
Yes,
instance, a
for
first
sure.
aid box. I mean, some countries, but it's a definite yes or no. Either you have it or you don't. If you've got a fire alarm, it's a yes or a no. So that's a definite. What we are now building, and you can see it coming through in our tool, and that's the value of our tool, is that we've now been able to build the benchmark that it's automatically, our algorithms automatically generate what that benchmark is.
Okay.
And so it does compute what is a given, as well as what practices are in place, so that it's beginning to calibrate against, well, it's basically calculating what the benchmark is. So it has some fixed numbers and numbers that are evolving.
I understand. And do you have any idea how many companies have taken the survey and the audit until now? And are they from all over the world? Are they mostly from New Zealand or Australia?
So they are from around the world, the US, Canada, New Zealand, Australia. Um, we've even got one company in China, um, and yeah. So we, off the top of my head, I can't remember the number of companies, but we've got approximately now 5,000 plus um, team members who are using the tool.
Very
So
nice. I
I think
think you
we've
can
got
get some
a
really interesting data soon out of it.
well, certainly. I mean, one of the pieces of data I was looking at was, what were the three key remote working issues, and the first thing that stood out from an organization perspective is that there is a challenge for many organizations to have the right policies and procedures, and the right comms tools, the right accounting tools in place.
For
That's a
sure.
significant challenge.
That is a significant challenge, and I've heard about taxation multiple times. I think it's always on the lips of HR at least. Make sure that employees are paying taxes where they should and that they're paid correctly as well and according to laws in the states that they are supposed to be living in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Many
So
organizations. are able to do that, who've been operating globally are doing that, but there are lots of organizations who have now begun to make use of the wider availability of remote work resources. Earlier, you may have been only thinking about your country.
Yeah.
Now you've got a wider base, and payments, taxes, all of those considerations now have to come into place.
And which is the biggest problem from a productivity perspective,
The biggest problem
or the biggest
is
questions?
that,
Yeah.
look, the biggest problem is that organizations, managers not being able to define what output is actually required. It's also followed up by the issues of teams communicating and collaborating to deliver what what those outputs are. So, for instance, if you're pulling together a communications project, you need different team members to come together, and it's about being able to set tasks and deadlines. No different, but the challenge is that I in quite often I don't have the ability to see what you're doing, or I don't know where you're up to. And so making sure that you have the right collaborative tools, the right communication platforms, no doubt, defining what output is required by when, and team members being encouraged to communicate. And this is something that some people do well, some people don't. So it's about being able to encourage everybody to be able to communicate at an even keel, so that wherever you are, you know what the other person's doing, you're aware of the other person's challenges, and you are committing to delivery times. And you obviously know what you're doing. If you've got that, then you've got your right. I mean, you're on your pathway to productivity. But underpinning any productivity is making sure you got the right environment, making sure that you teach children, dogs, and cats not to come and interrupt, or create the spaces for you. It's a new world, and in spite of these 6 months, there are several people, because you can't change a household in a hurry. It takes a while, and so
It
so
takes a
it's
while and
about
it takes
getting
a
those
budget as
distributed,
well.
and it takes a budget, and oftentimes it might just be now a one person income household, whereas it may have been before.
What's next for Snapshot and remote ability?
Right. Firstly, snapshots will. I think customer service will continue, and snapshots being aligned to the ISO 18295 customer service standard, digital standards globally. Uh, we just growing. Our customer base is growing, and the fact that it's been now available. I mean, has been available online. Um, Organizations are consuming it more than what they did before, online tools, and snapshots is growing and will continue to grow. um, as far as remote ability is concerned, whilst nobody can predict the future, just because you are remote work capable today, it doesn't mean that you're remote work capable in 6 months time. um, So there is an onus of responsibility for organizations and individuals to maintain that capability. And to be able to do that, you need a structured assessment. And that's what remotability will do. So if, according to predictions, we are going to have a blended remote work environment into the future, we believe that remotability will continue to be. But from our and my own perspective, what these last 6 months has also done for us is it's provided us with other opportunities for products and services that that are not available anywhere else in the world, just like snapshots and remote ability, where we can actually provide a need, we can do it. We can do it comprehensively. We can do it faster. And the important piece is to be able to deliver value to the individual and the organization and governments.
Are you working with governments?
Yes, indeed. We have several government organizations, local government organizations, who not only, I mean, who use snapshots. In fact, just the recent times, we had a webinar about where government and banking sector customers came together to talk about uh, how they are looking to map their journeys forward and what they are looking to do with their remote workforce. So what many government organizations have almost got 100% of their contact centers now remote working. And so, a combination of remote work and service delivery is what's going to be there for the future. So yes.
For sure, and this is what everyone is saying, that the hybrid will be the future, and this is what they are thinking of implementing. And some have already started on this path. Deepak, any words of wisdom from someone who sees inside the companies and understands what are the challenges that they're facing with moving remote? Something that our listeners should remember.
Um, I think the most important piece to remember is that nothing stays the same. And I think, in the words of Prince, not even the September rain. Um, and we need to think holistically. So the more organizations move out of their siloed thinking, that, look, we are health and safety, we are HR, we are tech, we are um, other parts of the organization. If we can look at it holistically and go, look, here are all the requirements, the investments that we need to make, and the productivity that we need to deliver what our stakeholders have tasked us to do, regardless of whether we are government or private sector. Uh, if we can break down those barriers, I think that would bring value to the stakeholders and customers that they're serving. That, I think, is the greatest challenge. We have been conditioned by our thinking of the past and the way we've been doing things in the past, but remote work now offers us a significantly new platform to retool and rethink the way we deliver goods and services to our customers.
For sure. Deepak, thank you so much for today. For those who want to get in touch, how can they reach out to you?
We've got, please reach out on my email. That's just simply Deepak, Deepak, at cxsnapshotz.com. So snapshots spelled with a cxsnapshotz.com.
I'll make sure to include it in the description. And can I include your LinkedIn link as well? Are you reachable via LinkedIn?
Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And of course, our website is www.cxsnapshotz.com as well, which I'm sure you might include in your.
Yes, for sure. For sure, I will.
So
Thank you
please
so.
feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to have any conversation from that you might want to have. We've got a lot of data across this whole spectrum, and happy to share some of the findings and to make your work and your life easier.
Thank you so much, Deepak.
Thank you very much, Julia. I appreciate the time and the opportunity.